Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Gear in the Machine. I'm Ryan Cleveland, the design director for Gears of War 5. Today we're going to be talking about third-person shooting mechanics. Third-person works a little bit differently than first-person, and going back all the way to Gears 1, Gears 2, Gears 3, Gears 4, where we have third-person shooting, each one of them has slightly different characteristics, but the most important change that happened in Gears 2 was moving from center screen aiming or shooting to the muzzle shooting. So what that means is in some circumstances, the bullets will come out of the muzzle and be traced to the target where the person is aiming. So this actually creates a triangle, right? So that where I'm looking with my center screen lands in a point, and then the bullets will be traced from the gun to the destination. The reason that Gears 2 moved to barrel shooting instead of staying with Gears 1 center screen shooting was fairness. Now in Gears 1, you could shoot around corners or over cover without exposing yourself. And what that meant is the person getting hit would just die. They wouldn't see why, they wouldn't see where the bullets were coming from, they wouldn't see, even the person would have to take no risk. They could just literally move their camera around the corner or over cover and pull the trigger, and there was nothing the person on the other side could do about it. This, for a third-person shooter, is very different than in a first-person shooter, because first-person shooters, the view is anchored in the body. If the person moves out of cover, then they can be seen by the other people. With a third-person camera, because the camera is off the character could stay in safety while the person could still shoot. And in Gears 2, they deemed that that wasn't fair, and they wanted to make sure that the people getting killed really understood why they were getting killed. And that meant for times where the character isn't shooting from the center of the screen, where the character and the camera aren't aligned, when the character's off to the side, that the bullets are going to come from where the gun is on the character, which means the character has to expose themselves in order to get the shot off. And that makes the combat much more fair and balanced than simply center screen aiming with a third-person character. It does, however, introduce a bunch of nuances and complexities into how the bullets get traced to hit the target or where they're aiming. So we're going to take a look at a clip here from Gears 5 that shows some of the things that may not be intuitive about third-person shooting. So let's take a look. So here you can see like a classic setup. Now, the bullets in this case are still coming from the gun. So you can see where the person is aiming here is the wall behind them. And that's considered the target. So that is the top of the triangle that we're talking about. The other part of the triangle is the center of the camera, which is a bit back and to the right of the character. So you can see the line that's traced from the camera to the wall is a little bit different than the line that gets traced from the gun to the wall. So here, what we get is a little bit of offset from that line. So as the reticle is aiming at different spots, the depth of the shot is changing. That's because the wall is going from further back to something closer towards the camera. So here, you can see the fact that the reticle is aimed at a much deeper object, and as that means that the triangle is longer, and we'll show this in just a second. So the bullet being traced from the muzzle is actually traveling further from the center of the screen for longer, and that means it's going to be able to hit somebody that's just standing off to the side of the shot. Now, as soon as you put the reticle over a character, that becomes the target of where it's aiming, and that means that the shot will converge at exactly that location. So we're actually just going to take this same sort of setup and we're going to break it down on a whiteboard. Now, like, we're going to get into trigonometry. It's not going to be like super complex math, but it is going to get a little dry, a little boring. It's going to be like lines on a whiteboard. So the first thing we're going to establish is like how muzzle firing works. So we've got our camera here. We have our shooting character. We have basically, we'll just represent the muzzle with a line here. So if the person is shooting from or looking at a target from the camera, so at a wall, say, and they're going to shoot from the muzzle, what you get is this triangle. Okay, so what that means is the bullet path is actually this path and not this path. And so if you're going to shoot at a wall that's closer, okay, what you actually get is a different triangle. So you can see the fact that this triangle is bigger and like skinnier, is longer and skinnier. This one is shorter and wider. So what that means is the bullet path, it actually takes a different angle relative to the line that the reticle is tracing. So what this means is if you have somebody that you're shooting at, like let's take this same scenario here, but you're actually going to be shooting at somebody. So this is where you would have shot, but because there's somebody now standing in your way, okay, what that means is that originally the bullet would have been traced to the wall, but now the bullet is actually being traced to this location. So even though you haven't moved, the character hasn't moved, the gun hasn't moved, the bullet will take a slightly different path, okay? So this means that when somebody steps out from behind cover and you actually put the reticles now over them, the bullet's gonna take a different path. And that's because you have a different target. Here, the game thinks you're shooting at the wall, and here the game thinks you're shooting at a person. So, why does this matter? Well, sometimes, if the person is standing here, they won't get hit. If the person comes a little bit further forward, they do get hit. So the distance between the target and where you're shooting will actually determine, even though they're just moving parallel to the trajectory of the reticle line, they'll still get hit in some places and not hit in others. So if you move sideways a little bit, you don't get hit, and then you move into it, and you do get hit. Now, if you move a little bit further, like we said before, then this becomes like the new target. Now, we're going to add obstacles into it. So we're going to let's take this guy here. So now we're going to have a piece of cover, tall cover. So you've got a shooter here, you've got the camera here, and you've got like a target here. So just forgive me if I take a few liberties with the lines here. So what can happen is that you can shoot from the muzzle, and to hit that spot, it will actually be blocked, right? So what that means is that the cover is actually on this triangular, like the edge of the triangle. So the reticle doesn't look like it's going to be blocked, but the wall does. Now, if somebody steps out, the triangle changes shape, and the person hasn't changed, but now you hit them, okay? So, like, depending on how far back you are from cover, depending on how far they are from the wall, depending upon how far they are from you, the different triangles will make different circumstances where sometimes you like hit the wall and sometimes you hit them. Now, again, like this isn't necessarily intuitive if the only thing you're looking at is where the reticle is placed. But to make Gears of War like a fair versus experience, having the bullets come from the muzzle like makes it a much overall better, like more fair experience. So like this is just the fundamentals of how shooting works in Gears. There's more layers to this that we want to get into, but we thought we'd explain the core muzzle versus like center screen aiming just to set the foundation for deeper discussions where we get into more nuances of this. So this should hopefully explain a lot of the videos that you're seeing where people are confused as to why they're hitting a character like in like one circumstance and then not in another, or they're hitting cover and then they're like not hitting the character. So just keep in mind the triangle, the shooting triangle of like the camera, the character, and the target. And when you're thinking about like why am I hitting or not hitting, just keep this in mind, and we'll get into some more detailed topics later. So now we're on to like right hand versus left hand, so the lefty flip. Which side the character is shooting from will change the shape of the triangle. So Gears by default has the character on the left. So we've got our camera, we've got our shooter, we have our target. So this creates that triangle that we were talking about earlier. Now if you flip, it creates a different triangle on the other side. And what this means is that if you're shooting at a target, okay, if that target is like here, you're going to hit that target even though this line is on the right-hand side of it. Okay, I'll draw this a little bit more like obvious, right? So you're going to hit this target even though the camera's on the right-hand side of it. Now, when you actually, if your character stays, the shooter stays on this side, and the character's here, the target is here. Okay, the same distance between these two circles, it's the same. However, you do not hit this character. So what this means is that when the character's on the left, they get a little more leeway on the left to hit the character, to hit the target. So if you're looking at a target straight on, that means if you're shooting here and your character's on the left, you're going to get a little bit more leeway on the left. And that has to do with like this triangle from the top down. Now, if you lefty flip, the whole thing changes to the opposite side. So what we're going to do is I'm going to lefty flip this guy. Okay. And that means now that this character gets hit. Even though the camera hasn't changed, the camera is staying in the same place, it's aiming at the same place, this character will now get hit and this character will get missed. And that means over here that if the character is on the right side of the screen and they're shooting at the same target, they're going to miss this character now because the bullets are biased to the right side of the screen. Okay? So when you lefty flip or stay default, it will impact which side of the reticle the bullets, like the muzzle trace, will come from. And you'll have to be aware of that based on where the character is in depth, right? So if the character is really close to the target, the impact is pretty negligible. If the character is really close to you, it can have a pretty big impact. So depending on where you are and which side of the screen you're on, you'll actually like have a slightly different shooting setup. And this again has to do with it being a third-person shooter where we're trying to create the most fair experience by making the shooter expose themselves to take the shot. If we just go from the center screen, this person, the shooter, could literally stay in cover and shoot whoever they want. And so that's why we force the muzzle fire, like the bullet fire, to come from the muzzle in most circumstances. Thanks for checking out this latest episode of Gear in the Machine. We covered a lot of material here. We covered third-person shooting mechanics. We covered how the triangle works, and we covered the lefty flip. We really hope that this has built a really strong fundamentals of how to think of Gears shooting or third-person shooting in general. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts about the game. Thank you so much for all the feedback, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all online.